Is it better for the public to be aware and to publicize killers or to keep murders under wraps? By naming killers, does the media feed into the killer's known narcissism?
Welcome to the second season of The Case Files. We are your hosts, Jacob Dougherty and
Georgia Scherrer.
Today we are covering one of the most infamous serial killers in California, the Zodiac Killer.
The Zodiac Killer committed as many as 37 homicides in San Francisco, Salinas, Vallejo, and even possibly Oceanside between the late 1960s and early 1970s. According to biography.com. He wrote letters to various police departments in Vallejo and San Francisco, and then sent letters to various newspapers. In his letters, he would add ciphers which were written in code found in library books such as, quote-unquote, code breakers, and detailed how if the ciphers were completed, his identity would be revealed. So we're now going to discuss some of our questions that align with this case. The first question being, should the public be left out of a crime or should they be informed and encouraged to help? Which is kind of tying back to the Salinas couple who solved the cipher. What are you thinking?
I think there's certain instances where the public should be involved. I mean, I think the cipher is a good example because it was obviously very complex and just a small group of people at the police department wouldn't be able to solve it all by themselves. But if you release it to a large amount of people, then you're going to have a greater chance of someone being able to figure it out. But then again, at the same time, it could be kind of risky, the police getting more people involved.
Yeah, don't you? We did an episode with the student murders, and people were getting so involved that they started attacking families online and stuff like that when these people were completely innocent. So that's another thing about releasing a lot of information. But the other hand is, like you said, they brought in the Navy and special forces to detect the cipher and to see what it said. And in the end, it was this random couple in California that happened to open their paper and were able to find out what it said. In the end, of course, it was not his real identity because that would have been too easy. But they ended up coming up with the solution, and that ended up helping the entire case as a whole. So yeah, like you said, it totally worked out in the end, which was a lucky instance. The police also had a huge issue with deciding whether or not they should print the cipher on the front page and give in to what he said, which means that he would have more and more control. Do you think they went with the right choice choosing the front page? They didn't choose the front page. Most of them chose the fourth page or something like that. Some did choose front page, but would you have chosen front page?
I mean, I think in this instance, they were being threatened by the killer that he would kill more people. So, I mean, if I was put in that position, I wouldn't want to be responsible for potentially the death of more people just by putting something on the front page. I don't know if they really had a choice because a threat like that can be very scary and you're dealing with real people's lives. So
better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
That's valid. And then, I'm not arguing with you, but devil's advocate, if they do give into that though, then all of a sudden, which some people did, the Zodiac started writing more and more letters saying, I want people to wear my buttons. And if you don't wear my buttons, I'm going to kill everybody. And then it was print another cipher on the front page. And so I guess there's a line we draw between saving people's lives and giving into someone's narcissism, so that's.
Yeah, especially just because people knew that he was capable of committing murder because it had happened before. It wasn't like some random person who was just I'm going to kill all these people, because those kind of threats happen all the time. But there was definitely a lot of instances where he killed someone, so they're definitely worried about that.
Yeah, exactly. How does naming killers increase narcissism, speaking of which, and possibly encourage publicity killing?
I think naming killers is just kind of a way of feeding into their ego. And I think a lot of the times killers kind of name themselves. They have a name they want to be called. I think, was it BTK? That guy, he would sign all his letters with the initials BTK, so the media would call him that.
Yeah.
Because that's the way, just feeding into his ego. He's I'm all over the news right now. But it's this weird name.
Yeah, exactly. That's why Zodiac was a huge deal at the beginning, because at first he just signed with that scope signature that we addressed earlier that possibly could have been a sign of narcissism. And that's all he signed with. And then out of nowhere, they got another letter, and it was the first line saying, I read it earlier, this is the Zodiac speaking. And it was police described it as having chills run down their back because they knew this was a big deal and it was bad. And I think that if they name themselves, it's a huge form of narcissism. And if they don't, if we name them, it's feeding into something that could be possibly unlocked. And we didn't really talk about narcissism as a definition. I feel like it's really important for this case overall. But it says here on the Mayo Clinic that narcissistic personality disorder is a mental health condition in which people have an unreasonably high sense of their own importance. So, of course, Zodiac is sitting there calling himself this.
Yeah, especially with what you said about the scope signature and being the center of the universe. Like, he was the center of his own universe, and everything kind of revolved around him. Mm-hmm. And he just wanted basically the whole world to bow down to him and do whatever he wanted.
And I don't know if this is like a loaded statement or anything, but I think in order to kill someone and get publicity from it and to be a serial killer, you've got to have a lot of narcissistic tendencies to be able to say, I'm going to take someone's life to be publicized, and the worse that I do at it or the best that I do at it, the better I'm going to become, the more likely people are going to be to know my name. And then they name someone BTK or the Raincoat Killer or Zodiac Killer, and it's just a snowball kind of effect, I feel like.
So do you think this case can ever be solved? Just kind of, it's a big question, but...
It is a very loaded question. I think that, like you said earlier, with the 60s not having the necessary technology, even if he did leave behind a ton of DNA, we are developing new technology all the time. There's this documentary that I can't stop talking about called The Most Dangerous Animal of All. I recommend that you guys watch it if you are interested in true crime. But it's about this guy that thinks that the Zodiac Killer is his dad because he saw a sketch, and at the same time that he saw the sketch of the Zodiac Killer, some old documentary was on, he was looking for his father that he had never known. And so he was totally convinced that he had found the Zodiac Killer. And the first 2 episodes really delve into why he might be right. And then the next 2 episodes after that are talking about why technology has proven that this man cannot be found, especially because they thought they knew Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac Killer, and then he died. And no other letter has ever been written after that. So, I mean, how do we find someone who has effectively disappeared off the face of the earth?
I don't know. I mean, I think just from like reading through all the research on this case, I feel like they kind of already solved it. Like, this guy seems like he could be the only one to do anything, unless he was being framed or something. Maybe he stopped writing letters because they're like, oh, they're never going to catch me if they think it's this person. But it seems pretty concrete. They can't ever confirm it really, but they might be able to consider it kind of closed.
Yeah, I mean, for some people that are like true crime buffs, I think it can be interesting to be able to look into cases and say, I wonder what happened to this person. Let's find out. And then you're just kind of, but with this man, you're grasping at straws. You know, we've seen so much evidence come out of nowhere with this guy. And apparently, according to Briefly News, the Zodiac Killer could still be alive if it weren't Arthur Lee Allen, because one of the main detectives is 80 years old. So this guy's obviously an older man. We're guessing, but this is another thing. We're guessing. So speaking from an objective point of view, I don't think this case will be solved. Maybe in 2085, we will find some amazing technology that can pick up whoever this guy was.
I think what people want is like a concrete answer, which they're never going to get if the guy's dead. Exactly. They want the killer to confess directly.
Yeah, closure. Yeah. And this kind of closure is not going to come easily. And people have spent their entire lives looking for this guy. A lot of the reporters surrounding this and a lot of the police officers that looked into this case have worked tirelessly. They've spent their lives dedicating to it to find closure for the families. But in the end, it's a great thing to try and get that closure for someone. It's another thing to be grasping at straws. So, but similar to our previous episode, is it worth to expend time and resources on a police level to deal with the crimes from decades ago? I think we're talking about, what episode are we referencing there? Like Jeffrey Dahmer?
I don't think we did an episode on it.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, well, I know we definitely talked about it.
You guys can go watch our previous episodes, maybe.
Maybe we'll come out with Jeffrey Dahmer in the future.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But anyway,
we did an episode. Do you think that it's worth it to?
I think to a point, because I think, especially in this case, it seems like they're at the point where they're just grasping at straws. There's no concrete evidence to kind of move them forward in the case. But say there's a case, but they have like this strong evidence that they can still research, right, for years to come. I mean, I think then at that point it'd be a good use to solve a cold case.
We did do Jeffrey Dahmer.
We think.
Did we? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, voice clips.
We did.
This is behind the scenes. Yes, we did. That was our first TW warning, was it not?
Oh yeah. She was right.
I might not be. So okay, using. I don't think that was right. Anyway, using technology after it's something that's been closed, are we possibly neglecting other crimes that have taken place today because we're expending resources on someone's potential that could be used to solve a crime that could be detrimental to what we're experiencing today versus someone who's saying, I can't work on that case because I'm still trying to figure out who the Zodiac Killer is, you know?
Yeah, I think it's important, though, to bring closure to all deceased families. I mean, it's never a good thing just to have a case open for decades and families just live on never knowing exactly what happened.
Exactly. So it comes to a level of like manpower versus machine power. And so like you can put a machine on the Zodiac Killer forever and hope that it solves it. But as far as manpower goes, I think personally we should be putting manpower towards something that can solve someone's life, you know, that can save someone's life. And then machine power, you know, if you've got like 10 minutes after work or something and you want to see if this DNA matches up to the Zodiac Killer, go for it. No one's stopping you. But other than that, expending time and resources on a police level, especially because police departments are so small, I think we talked about that too. With smaller police departments, you want to make sure that like you're putting all of that energy to the best possible case.
Yeah, for sure. Is it better for the public to be aware and to publicize killers or to keep murders under wraps? By naming killers, does the media feed into the killer's known narcissism?
This has been the first episode of the new season on the Case Files. Make sure to listen to our previous season from
Jacob Dougherty
and Georgia Scherrer. See you next time.